performance training, and it's a second day of your program for high performance training. It is the theme is the science of endurance training. So whatever game is related with the endurance events, we will be having the webinar these days, subsequent days, maybe maybe alternate day, giving a span for one day to work your things and again sit together for an hour and a half. So this is the aim actually being taken up. So today we are fortunate enough to have with us Padmashri Arjuna Awardee, Mrs. Bula Choudhury, and her husband, international sweeper, Sanjeev Chakraborty. And as a resource person, we have today Mr. Partha Pratim Majumder. Is a international fame coach and is the head coach for Glenmark National Center of Excellence, Delhi. So along with that, we have our high performance director, Dr. Pratim Majumder. I told yesterday because of his initiation, his views, his thought, this webinar is being launched in cooperation with the Sports Authority of India, Delhi, as well as the Sports Authority of India, Netaji Subhash System Center, Kolkata, as a host. So before we going to the topic, request I would like to request the elite swimmer in past and icon for swimming from India, Mrs. Bula Choudhury, Arjuna Awardee, and Padmashri, and also the Tenzing Norgay National Award for Adventure Sports. And she was also having the experience of crossing international channels and including English Channel twice. So it's a great long distance swimmer. If you talk about swimming distance, how much she crossed over, I can assure that she is the maximum distance she crossed over the seas, river, or whatever may be. So I like to request Mrs. Bula Choudhury to speak about your experience to run in long distance, and what are the challenges you face physically, and what are the challenges you face environmentally during this span of swimming in your past days. Mrs. Bula Choudhury, please.
Hello everyone, good morning to all. It's very nice to speak about swimming experience, and thank you Sports Authority of India doing means आज का जो program है ये कि is very good for all the swimmers, not only swimmers, for all the sports persons. I will say my experience is very good, though it's very tough. I mean, channel is not so easy. I mean, nothing is easy in life. Everything is very tough, and but everything is, I think, is possible if you want to do something for your country, for you, for your family. And hard work is, I think, the last word. I will say doing the long distance swimming. First, everyone know that I used to do short distance swimming. I love to swim fast. But later on, when I was become champion for many years, and I was breaking my record, and I got Arjuna Award, President Awards from the President. But then after that, after all this achievement, I thought, I must do something else, which many people can't think about it. So because I love the ocean, I love the sea, I love swimming, so I choose to do something in long distance, like challenging thing. While I was thinking about the English Channel, first time, I never thought how tough it was. When I went to England, and first day when I put my legs into the water, then I came to know that how tough it will be for me, and to fulfill my dream. But everything is here, I think, all in mind. You have to set up your mind first that I want to do something, I want to do. And then later on, I spoke myself, Ki Bula, no, you cannot go back doing nothing here. You have to swim and success. So later on, first day I swam 15 minutes. Then later on, slowly, it took me. I took 12 hours to do practice in the Dover. So that way I started my dream project, first time to doing the English Channel. While I swam successfully in English Channel once, then I came back here in India, Kolkata, and then I thought I'll never go back for channel and all this thing because it was so tough and very painful and risky, life challenge, everything. Then I again joined in short distance swimming, doing my all my short distance, like I was butterfly queen. I love to say that because many years I was champion on that, and 21 years my record was unbroken. After doing the English Channel, then I came back and swam again the national and the international. I got sub games. You know, I think everybody knows that I got 10 gold medals from the sub games. While coming back from the English Channel, I done again the sub games, and I broke my record only in sub games and many international events, but I was not getting challenge over there. I thought I can do much better result if I do more practice and I can do something which I used to read in a book, a story that সাত সমুদ্র তেরো নদী পার করে এক রাজকুমার আসবে. It that story is clicked my mind, and then I thought I must do something in reality what I read in the magazine or in the book, I must do in reality. So that way I started to fulfill my dream like seven seas. Means Hindi में बोलता है कि सात समुद्र तेरा नदी पार करना. So I wanted that to fulfill that dream and make a history. And of course, I wanted to do the toughest thing so nobody can touch my record. So that way, slowly, I started doing the English channel 2 times. That become the record, Asian record to make doubles channel, English channel. Then I went to Spain, Gibraltar State. I broke world record over there. Then slowly, I made Catalina channel. You can hear me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are very clear.
So everything stopped. So I thought maybe I am just speaking myself. So anyway, then after that, I done the Catalina channel, USA, then Fox State in Sri Lanka, and then South Africa, Robben Island. I crossed Tornius Gulf in Greece, and New Zealand, Cook State, then Robben Island in South Africa. So that way, I become the first in the world to swim the 5 continents in the world and 7 seas. So that's where I make the record, and still I think some those record is remain. Hello.
Well, Bula, I just wanted to ask you. I mean, a lot of funds required to have that kind of sports. I mean, is there? I mean, how you manage that? Because it's a major challenge so far as the funding is concerned. Because
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I think the easiest to swim, to cross the channel is the easiest. To
right.
yes, and to get the sponsorship and fund to raise the fund is it was very difficult. But my thanks my husband Sanjeev Chakraborty, who is also a great swimmer. He was behind me, so I can fight to get the fund collect. But many channels I was not. I could not collect the fund enough, so I have to spend my own money. Many channels it is very tough to get fund because I got more stuff because in Calcutta, you know, West Bengal is very difficult to get the sponsorship. Everybody face that. I mean, I am also not out of that. Um, and I will say, you know, after I'm getting married and I got the child, my son born Sarvajit, and people were not believing on me. It was very tough because I become mother and nobody believed ki, you know, I can swim, I can cross the channel and all this thing. Everybody used to say that Bula is finished, no, she can't do anything. So like that, it was more difficult for me to get the sponsorship or fundraise because I am become mother. And I have crossed all the channel after I become actually I've given the born to my son.
Yeah, it's wonderful listening from Bula because Bula is really, I joined in SAI in 1990 when you and Shajib, both of you are in the national camp. So I still
Yes.
remember that Delhi as well as Bangalore, you have a short camp at Calcutta. Sorry, Calcutta. So these are the two places you guys used to have the camp during those days.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, yes. Yeah, my swimming career started very early.
I
I
know,
mean,
I know.
uh, everybody knows that I'm always speaking like that. Yeah, I learned swimming when I was 2 years old. Everybody knows, and I was junior age group champion when I was 9 years old. So that time, that way I started my swimming career, and it's long way I swam. I mean, after I finished my long short distance swimming, and then I shifted to long distance swimming. So it's a huge time I got. I mean, I swam like decade. I swam in 70, 78, you can say. That first national, national, I didn't got any medal. From
Mm.
79, I started to getting the, means 3 decades, 70s, 80s, 90s, even to 2005, I stopped my long distance swimming. So you can imagine that how long I am swimming.
No, I
I
know.
love to swim. As my water is for me is God.
But
And you can
I
see,
just wanted to.
I'm wearing a t-shirt. So as name is Bula. Yeah, I just introduced it. So I
Right.
love swimming, and for me it's a God. And I believe that nobody can live without water, and even myself
True.
and
Very true.
everybody. Uh,
But one thing is interesting from Bula's comment that
uh,
Mrs. Bula.
the foundation is so strong during those times where she could able to have her performance lasting for around 15 years, which is very seldom you will find out in the present generation of any of the swimmers. Part I am talking about part. You take my thing because it's very difficult to have the performance of 15, 17 years down the line.
Yeah, it's amazing, hats off to her performance. I'm glad
Thank
that
you,
every
Partha.
year we are meeting together. At least প্রত্যেক বছরে আমরা meet করি. We meet in Khelo India meet as selectors,
Yes,
I guess.
absolutely, absolutely right, absolutely right. Yeah, Partha is also
Something
doing
from
very well.
Sanjeevda. Sanjeevda is there.
Sanjita, Sanjita is just, he will take little time, just 5 minutes.
Okay, at the end, let him.
Hello. Anybody have any question?
We'll have
We
it
can do.
after the
We can
session. I
start the
mean,
lecture, and at the end we can ask.
both of them to have a joint thing after this session, maybe after 45 minutes.
Okay, okay, that will be better.
Yeah.
HPD High Performance Director Dr. Pralay Majumdar to speak about this webinar and introduce our today's speaker, Mr. Partha Pratim Majumdar, please.
Well, Partha Pratim Majumdar is a very name is, any of the swimming lovers, they know his name. He did his master in sports science and ASCA level FINA certified coach. Then AIS, Australian Institute of Sports certified coach, mind trainer. Greater NYC certified instructor. NFHS USA certified coach. It's a long thing. I cannot read everything, but what I can tell the viewers that I know him from early 90s when he was taking the national camp at Bangalore, and many of the ace swimmers that time was in the junior level. The name is a household name now these days. They were in the junior when Parth was in the national panel during 90s and mid 90s. He is presently working as head coach, Thai Glenmark National Aquatic Center of Excellence. And before going to that, I will request Part to take over, and Part you just talk, because I don't exactly, the topic is not, you just talk about the topic and then come
Sure,
to your presentation, please.
sure. So I'll start with my screen sharing. I hope you all can see the screen. Can you all see the screen?
Yeah, it's clear.
Perfect.
It is.
Okay. Right. My topic of discussion is training approach and periodization of mid-distance and distance swimmers. And as a coach, I feel that, distance swimming in India is coming up pretty well. And as we always say, aerobic comes before anaerobic. So even if you are coaching a route level swimmer in future whom you expect to be a sprinter and they haven't reached puberty, it is important for us to understand and value the aerobic capacity, or value the endurance, or value the mid distance and distance swimming approach. And then later on, of course, you can segmentize them based on their muscle development and other activities. So let us start our talk. As I said, my training approach and periodization of mid distance swimmer. When we talk about this, I like to start with quote of Dr. Orson Matson, and I strongly believe in that. Understanding swimming is first about understanding the biomechanics, then understanding the effect of biomechanics on physiology. So we are supposed to understand the biomechanics first. The segment of swimming is sports, which includes a lot of technique and sports science. So the training approach, or the overall talk approach today, we're going to discuss about training need of a swimmer initially. Then we'll go to the training component, training zone, and training intensity talk. Then since it's a sports science webinar, we are going to discuss about sports science approach and analysis of distance and mid-distance swimmer and their training effect. Then we are going to discuss about periodization of mid-distance and distance swimmer, and we end up with some question and answer series. Since there are a lot of other coaches of other discipline, I'm sure you will find similarities in terms of approach towards distance-based or endurance-based sports person. So let us start with our first slide. Training need of a swimmer. Now, what are the training need of a swimmer, especially endurance-based swimmer? The first thing is, of course, you need to stay healthy. And especially in this Corona time, staying healthy is the foremost important thing for all of us. You cannot have injury. You cannot go to a zone where you go beyond the fatigue level. Nutrition, your resting pattern is, of course, one of the major components in this field. Our second thing is hydrodynamics. Now, here comes the coach. When we talk about hydrodynamics, in swimming term, it's basically correlate your buoyancy and gravity. So basically, we are talking more about body alignment. If your body is not well aligned, no matter how much force you apply to move yourself forward, propel yourself forward, you won't move faster. To move faster, or to generate more speed, first you need to align your body in such shape which will ensure that you have minimum amount of resistance. So reduction of resistance comes first before you start propulsion. If you want to start propulsion first and then try to do reduction of resistance, you're not going to be outstanding swimmer, especially in mid distance or distance level. Because if you have a lot of resistance in your body while propelling yourself forward, you end up getting fatigued quickly, you end up burning all your energy, and you're going to lose the race anyway. So, we cannot afford to have that. That's something we need to understand as a coach. So first come your body alignment, balance, spend a lot of time on that, whether you're coaching the beginner, whether you're coaching the intermediate, whether you're coaching the elite. First, hydrodynamics, and then comes biomechanics. Now, what is biomechanics? Once you got the body alignment, once you determines the potential of stroke, then you go to biomechanics, which is basically, in simple terms, stroke efficiency. How efficient your stroke, or optimizing of stroke length. I've used the term optimizing. Now, you might have very good distance per stroke, but you cannot move your hand really faster because of that extra distance per stroke. That's not going to help you. So you need to optimize your stroke length by getting a right kind of stroke efficiency. Right after this, I'm going to show you some video how to optimize your stroke efficiency for distance swimmers in compared to sprint swimmers. We're going to come with that. The next component is very, very important. And here we really need the support of sports science. Of course, we need the sports science in biomechanics and hydrodynamics also. There are four major components in my thought in physiology: aerobic capacity, anaerobic capacity, aerobic power, and anaerobic power. So always remember, capacity comes first, then goes to the power. What is capacity? If I'm holding a bottle, the water inside is my capacity. But how I'm going to push the water out, drain the water out, is my power. If I have very small hole in the bottle, even if I have full bottle, I won't be able to use my capacity properly. So capacity and power, these are the very important terms in modern swimming. And the more we use that and more we use it more efficiently, we are going to create better and better distance and mid-distance swimmers. Psychology is, of course, a very important part. Mind training and all these things are correlated with swimming. We are not going to touch that part a lot. If you want, we have some YouTube video on psychology in swimming. May search and see that there. So let us start our first topic, which is hydrodynamics. As I said, let me show you a very basic drill to start with, how we can kind of understand the body balance of a swimmer. Now, when we are talking about distance or mid-distance swimmer or endurance-based swimmer, reduction of resistance comes first. And you can only understand reduction of resistance when you can align your body without any additional support. Means without any kicking, without any pulling, if your body is straight and streamlined in the water. And that needs the support from your buoyancy. What is buoyancy? The force which lifts you up inside the water. And which force lifts you up inside the water? It's your lungs, because your lungs got air inside, and that acts as a floater. Now you need to use your lungs in such manner that it should align your body in a horizontal position. Let us see this drill. I think from basic to elite level coach, everyone can try and do this with their swimmer. And if you want to create a distance swimmer, it's very easy to understand whether that swimmer got good buoyancy potential by looking at it. If you look at this swimmer, he's doing 2-3 stroke with kicking and pulling, and then there's a stop, kicking and pulling and gliding. And while doing the glide, you should see that his body is wholly horizontal at the surface. Portion of his body is at the surface. If you can see, his leg is drowning, only his head is up. He's more sprint-based swimmer, because generally, compared to distance, sprint-based swimmer have less capacity of flotation, where distance-based swimmer have more capacity of flotation, and the flotation capacity determines by your horizontal posture, if your leg is not sinking. Now next, let us come to the next part of science of swimming, which is biomechanics. Biomechanics, when we talk about biomechanics, we're talking about stroke efficiency. Now, stroke efficiency, what is efficiency? It varies, it varies with the distance what you want to achieve or the event what you want to target for. Now, if you're targeting a sprint event and you're doing a lot of glide in your stroke, you're not going to end up with a, very good performance. Because in sprint, if you're doing a lot of gliding in your stroke, you're going to hamper your stroke frequency or stroke rate. That's not going to make you a good swimmer. So I'm going to show you two videos, a sprint swimmer and a mid-distance swimmer. Before we start about the video, let us see those two pictures. Sprint swimming approach is more like a glass full of water and you have to take the water out of the glass. So what's your main job is to suppose the water is the energy, how quickly you can burn all the energy. That's kind of sprint swimming, because it's about 20 to 25 seconds what you need to swim for. But in mid-distance or distance even, you need to hold that energy for a prolonged time and need to ensure that you give the energy step-by-step manner. So it's more like a small hole in the bottle in the picture on the right side. So the mouth of the bottle should not be very big for mid-distance swimmers. Let us see these two videos. And these two swimmers belongs to our academy. One is Veer Khatkar on the left side. He's a very strong sprinter. On the right side, we have Shivangi Sharma. She's one of the top mid-distance swimmer in the country. Recently, she got about free gold and free silver in some games. Now, if you look at left side, you'll see a sprinter doesn't stretch their hand forward. They try to push their hand down and then try to pull as quickly as possible. Since they always try to move their shoulder forward while swimming, we call it more shoulder-driven freestyle. Here the body rotation is going to be less, so less hip movement, strong kicking, explosive kicking, if you can look at that swimmer. So a sprint approach is more shoulder-driven, but a distance approach needs to be more hip-driven because a lateral body has less resistance than a flat body. Always remember that. So when your body is more lateral, you're actually having least amount of resistance. If you look at this girl, her hip is close to the surface, her body is more aligned compared to the sprint. After she put her hand inside the water, first thing what she's doing is she's stretching forward. By this stretching, she's actually giving some rest to her hand so that she can prolong her movement for longer duration. And she's getting good rotation. And this rotation is coming from hip. So for mid-distance or distance level swimmer or endurance-based swimmer, your training or your stroke approach should be hip-driven rather than shoulder-driven. So this is the basic of your hydrodynamics and a bit of biomechanics. But our main chapter is more sports science oriented. And let us understand the energy zone, right? Before we start our talk, what kind of energy you need for swimming? As most of you coaches are know, and there are all the coaches, I'm sure you'll be knowing that there are three major energy systems we work on. One is ATP-CP, which is phosphorus energy system. One is glycolytic anaerobic energy system, and one is aerobic system. As you can see in the chart, there are different events, 50 to 1500 meter in freestyle. This data has been collected in the year 2008 from the top level male freestylers. If you can look at the timing, these are best top quality timings, what you can have. And these are the timing, based on this kind of timing, what kind of energy system these swimmers are using. 50 meters have about 38% ATP-CP, 58% anaerobic, only 4% aerobic, which is, so value of aerobic is very, very less. The value of endurance is very, very less. But when we talk about mid-distance swimming, which is 200 to 400 or maybe 800, we'll see that the aerobic dependency is more than 50%. So we have to value aerobic. We have to value aerobic capacity. We have to do something to ensure the aerobic capacity of a swimmer is getting better and better, because whenever we are swimming any distance from 200 onward, we need that support. Where if you look at ATP-CP, it's very less. And of course, the anaerobic capacity is going less and less for 1500 freestyle, which is about 11%. Let us discuss about the energy zone first. What are the energy zone we have? Now, I'm talking about American style of energy zone, but for sure, different countries have British and Americans are very similar. Australians probably have 5 energy zones. I think some other country, Canadians have 7 energy zones. So it depends on the country, but the concept of energy zone lies same. There are 3 parts to it. The first part of this energy, which is EN1, EN2, and EN3, is basically endurance 1, endurance 2, and endurance 3. So it's more aerobic zone. What kind of heart rate you have in each segment of swimming is shown on the right side. If it is under 130, you're swimming at aerobic zone, EN1. If your heart rate is between 130 to 160 per minute, your swimming is in heart rate anaerobic threshold zone or CSS. And if your heart rate is 160 to 180, you're swimming at VO2 max or lactic production. LPR is lactic production and removable sets. Now, that's another important set. We're going to come back to that later. What is lactic production and removable set? What kind of rest you're supposed to give also written in the chart. You can have a look at it. I'm not going to tell you much because it's very clear in the system. SP1 and SP2 are anaerobic. SP3 is not anaerobic. SP3 is lactate, which ATP-CP, and HVO is high velocity overload, which is about 20 meters swimming or 15 meters swimming with explosive rate, right? So when we are talking about short sprint, we are talking about explosive. Now the research says that when we do long-term athletic development plan, as long as swimmer doesn't have puberty, and generally it goes for all the athletic sport, not only for swimming, I guess, as long you don't have puberty, you should start with aerobic, efficiency, and sprint, which is SP3, means ATP-CP, but do not go to anaerobic zone. I'm sure Dr. Majumder will agree with that. Once you cross puberty, then the term of lactic production and lactic tolerance comes in. Because if you are doing a lactic tolerance set and lactic production set a lot to a kid who haven't got their puberty and you're expecting that kind of performance, you may not derive the result. You may not get the output because their muscles are not ready for it. Their hormones are not supporting for that. Okay, now let us go to the next slide of understanding this 4 term, which is the foundation of swimming coaching. Aerobic capacity, anaerobic capacity, aerobic power, anaerobic power. Now remember, when we talk about these 4 components, we are supposed to mix the energy zone in that. In every segment, you have to mix the energy zone in different manner. There should be priority energy zone, but the other energy zone has to be there. It's not that if I say aerobic capacity, you're only going to do short swimming, long swimming, and glide. That's not going to help you to build aerobic capacity. You also need to ensure that you work on the other component, but bit less. Because the fundamental is when you lift one part, aerobic capacity, you're actually putting the anaerobic capacity down, or you're actually putting the aerobic power down. So you have to have good balance in all the segments. Let me read this a bit, that will help you. Increase the maximum uptake of oxygen is one of the important things for aerobic capacity. High volume, low intensity workout and short interval training, both are important for aerobic capacity development. I'll just come back to this. It's not only high volume and lower intensity workout which will build your aerobic capacity. It might build your cardiovascular capacity, but to build your aerobic capacity means you're building your cardiovascular capacity, endurance of cardiovascular capacity, and you're also building the endurance of your muscle. To build a muscle, I'll come to a chart which will explain you why we have to do some moderate high intensity practice also. So training zone 1 and 2, as you can see in the previous chart, 1 and 2 is EN1 and EN2, leads in aerobic capacity practice. When we talk about anaerobic capacity practice, training zone 4 leads the practice, which is SP1, which is more lactic production set. So lactic production set, where your heart rate is going to be 180 plus, generally leads the anaerobic capacity of a distance or any swimmer, but mainly distance or mid-distance swimmer. Aerobic power. When we talk about aerobic power, training zone 3, which is the most important. If you want to make a distance swimmer faster, you have to work a lot on aerobic power because that's the one which will give you the success in distance event. So aerobic power is mainly training zone 3. As you can see, it's VO2 max, lactic production and removal. The heart rate is generally 160 to 180, where if you are a sprint-based swimmer, your heart rate goes to 170 to 190. So I'm just talking about distance swimmers angle. Then you have anaerobic power. Anaerobic power is not that important for swimmers. I'll be very honest with you. It's mainly training zone 5. I haven't mentioned training zone 6 because in all these segments, whether you do aerobic, anaerobic, aerobic power or anaerobic power, in everything, ATP-CP practice has to be there. Short sprint practice, no matter whatever your training schedule. Suppose today you want to do, long distance swimming, 1500 meter long distance, but you have to start with some ATP-CP practice, some short sprint, some HVO. That has to be there in everyday schedule, or at least in regular schedule in your training activity. So zone 6 has to be there in regular. Otherwise, zone 1 and 2 leads aerobic capacity. Zone 4 leads anaerobic capacity. Zone 3 or EN3 leads aerobic power. and zone 5 SP2 leads anaerobic power. So this is the basic fundamental for your practice. Let's go to the next thing. हमने तो बहुत इजी तरह बता दिया आपको, हाँ, EN1, EN2, EN3, SP1, SP2, SP3. It's very easy to understand and follow this. But how are we going to implement that? हम लोग कैसे इसको apply करेंगे? How we are going to implement that in our regular practice? Because a swimmer is not going to understand aerobic capacity. A swimmer is not going to understand anaerobic capacity. They are not going to understand anything. But they will understand only one thing: at what pace you want them to swim. That's what the swimmer. So we need to determine the pace or the training intensity. And how will we understand the training intensity? I have given you 5 options because you might have different facilities. So I've given you 5 options to understand training intensity. One is RPE, rate of perceived exertion. So at the end of the practice, or at the end of the set, or at the beginning of the set, you can ask the swimmer, this is what we do sometimes, in a scale of 1 to 10, and this will also help you to ensure that a swimmer doesn't go to fatigue zone. कोई भी swimmer, होता है आपके training group में, there are multiple swimmers, and some swimmer or some trainee might be going to the fatigue zone without your knowledge. So when you ask this thing, it will give you understanding, okay, in a very simplified form, how we can prevent that. RP is rate of perceived exertion. It's in a scale of 1 to 10. You can ask 3 simple questions. How do you explain what pain you have at the end of practice in a scale of 1 to 10? Suppose the swimmer says 5. So when they say pain, they're actually talking about anaerobic. How much tiredness you have? So when they are talking about tiredness, they're actually talking about aerobic. And how much feel you have at the end of the practice? When they're talking about feel, they're actually talking about efficiency and motivation. So once you look at these 3 areas, keep asking the swimmer every day after practice and keep a note of that. That will give a very clear idea that how to understand the training intensity. This is one way. The second way of understanding training intensity is heart rate. I've just shown you this picture and you can see what kind of heart rate you expect for different zone of practice. So that will help you to kind of understand. Then blood lactate. I'll just come to blood lactate right after this. So we will discuss it later. The next approach is very popular and we always do that, and a lot of top swimmer does that, is percentage of personal best. So based on your personal best timing, you draw the percentage and see the percentage, and based on that percentage you can determine different intensity level, whether it's 85%, 90%, 95%, or 98% of your effort. So remember, distance swimmer will achieve higher percentage compared to a sprinter because the fatigue level for distance swimmer is less compared to a sprinter. And one of the most supportive thing and very easy for coaches and very, very accurate is test sets. So you can do few test sets like 3K, T20, and today at the end of the practice or during this, at the end of this session or in the middle of the session, probably after 2-3 slides, I'm going to share a website link which will give you a right kind of understanding about what kind of timing you need to have to get your CSS, critical velocity or critical speed. So we will discuss that later. So test sets are also important, and how your practice is happening, how you're developing a swimmer will also come from the test set result. I will show you some of the result of Kushagra Rawat, who got 3B qualifying timing. I think first time ever in India, any swimmer have done it. 3B cut Olympic qualifying timing, and how we managed to get that, I will show in this video. And now this 3K and T20 test set is also a Khelo India accredited test set. The protocol and all the details you can find in you can get in the Khelo India website. Okay, now since we have discussed about a bit of aerobic and aerobic capacity, let us discuss a bit of muscular endurance. I'll just go by the basic. There are 3 kind of muscles. I mean, basically there are 2 kind of muscles, slow twitch and fast twitch have 2 different types, fast twitch A and fast twitch B. The energy production in this 3 kind of muscle, as you can see in the picture, very nicely, simply derived, A slow twitch muscle are basically for endurance swimmer. So endurance swimmer is basically other swimmer who cannot do very strong vertical jump or who cannot do explosive push-up very nicely, but you will see they can hold the energy for longer duration. They can do long running, or they can do any endurance-based or aerobic-based set. So they are mostly slow twitch dominated swimmer. So as I said, when you're testing a swimmer, or when you try to evaluate a swimmer, whether the swimmer got potential for distance or mid-distance swimming, the first test, what I've shown, the buoyancy capacity, which will help you to understand as a simplified way as a coach. The other thing is you can also understand by slow twitch muscle fiber. Now there's a myth. There's a myth in swimming that to build endurance, you just need to do long and slow swimming. Aram se comfortable swimming, you do at a very low intensity and do it for a very longer duration of time, and you're going to build the endurance. It is somewhat correct, but not correct totally. Why it's somewhat correct? Because it's going to develop your cardiovascular capacity. That's very good, right? But it's not going to increase your muscle endurance. Means it's not going to increase the density of mitochondria in your muscle cell. For that, the biopsy says our nervous system act like that. Man lijiye you have 1 kilo of muscle, 1 kilo of slow twitch fiber, and you're lifting your hand up and down at a very slow rate, maybe for 5 times, right? So once you do that, it's very easy and comfortable movement. So your nervous system is not going to engage the full slow twitch muscle fiber bundle. It's going to engage partial muscle fiber bundle, which are going to lead the thing. The rest of the muscle fiber are just going to be moving along with, but they are not going to be active. They're not going to do the contraction. As you can see on the graph on the right side, if your intensity is very low, as you can see in the one, when the intensity level is very low, it's about 30 to 40%, the engagement of whole slow twitch fiber is very less. Slowly, when you increase the intensity, I'm not talking about the peak intensity, but slowly when you go to a moderate intensity zone, only all your slow twitch fibers are going to be engaged forward. That means when we are talking about building the muscle endurance, unless you activate all the muscles of slow twitch base, you're not going to build the muscle endurance. So for that, you have to swim with a moderate intensity. So when we are talking about building aerobic capacity, not only you need to do long and glide swimming, but you also need to do some moderate intensity short race swimming. That is also important. Or maybe variable speed swimming also. Maybe 2 into 400 at a very slow rate, and then 6 into 50 at a moderate speed. Again 2 into 400, 4 into 50, 2 into 400, 2 into 50, something like that. These are very easy set to do, but this will help you to endure your cardiovascular system and also endure your muscle, and that will give you the great output. I think that is a very important approach for swimming. This is the fundamental, I would say, the fundamental for distance or mid-distance swimmer. What do you mean by that? What is fundamental, and what do you understand from this graph? It's a lactic graph. What is lactic graph? While a swimmer is swimming, we are taking the lactic acid and we are measuring, what kind of lactic acid they produce. I expect that, most of you know what is lactic acid and how you produce. So because it's a sports science webinar, so we are going to talk a little detailed about it. So generally what happens when you start any activity, whether it's swimming or any other sport, since you're starting the activity more than your comfort zone, the lactic acid state goes slightly high. Then after some time, there'll be a steady lactic state in your body, steady state in your body. And why that steady state in your body? Because you're also removing the lactic acid. So there are 2 stages. One is you're producing lactic acid. The other is you're reducing lactic acid. So once you have these 2 balanced, you get a term called steady state or lactic steady state. As a distance swimmer, we need to see how we are going to get that lactic steady state with maximum speed. And if you can get that lactic steady state in maximum speed, you will get good performance. I'll give you a very simple example. If you see Sanyang or all the top swimmers, or Sanyang, let's talk about 400 or 1500 freestyle. Take any of these 2 distance events, right? In 400, except first 50, all the rest of the 50s of Sanyang are generally same. Timings are same. In 1500, except first 100, all the hundreds and the last 100, of course, all the other 1300s, the timings are same. But how you manage to maintain the same timing? You can manage to maintain the steady same timing when your body is not getting too much fatigue. your body is not getting too much fatigue. And how your body is not getting too much fatigue? Because you're swimming in a state where not only you're producing lactic acid, but you're also removing the lactic acid, and it's well balanced. Like in this corona time, this is what happens in Delhi now. The number of new cases in Delhi, what is happening, and the number of recovery in Delhi, what is happening, are similar. So we are kind of happy that, okay, Delhi is doing a good job now, right? So similarly, how we are going to derive? Generally, we derive it like this way. We can understand from their heart rate. We can understand from their RPE. If you look at the lactic graph, it's a graph of a particular swimmer. The swimmer started with some set with 126 meter per second, which is about 1 minute 19 seconds per 100. And swimmer was very comfortable. Then, the coach might have asked the swimmer to go at a higher zone, maybe 118 per 100. The swimmer is more steady again. Slowly, they go to 133, which is about 1 minute 15 seconds per 100. At 133 meter per second speed also, you see the swimmers holding the same heart rate in all the 100. And if the swimmer is holding same heart rate in all the 100, that means they're in a lactic steady state, roughly, because you don't have the support of lactic acid, and you cannot take lactic acid in this kind of set, because you generally do 30 repetition or 20 repetition of this kind of sets of hundreds. But you'll see after changing that from 115 to 114, the swimmer suddenly getting a peak in lactate, or swimmer suddenly getting the feel of pain, or swimmer suddenly getting a higher lactate. So you can derive that this is the zone, 115 is the zone where swimmer have a maximum lactate steady state. Maximum lactate steady state lies between, now let me talk about technicalities, lies between a lactic acid between 3 to 4 millimole. So when we talk about lactic acid between 3 to 4 millimole, it's generally 4 for other sport, but for swimming it's slightly less because it's more horizontal sport, right? So the lactic acid can be removed quickly. So generally 3 to 4 is the range where a swimmer gets their maximum lactic steady state swimming, which we term as MLSS. We also use a term called CSS, critical swimming speed, or anaerobic threshold. All these terms are similar. So whether CSS, anaerobic threshold, MLSS, it's more or less the similar term. And you can derive that. And today at the end, I'm going to show you a link from where you can derive the CSS pace of a particular swimmer by giving their 400 and 200 personal best time. This is one of the fundamental for us, and probably in any elite coaching level, whenever you're talking about elite coaching level, we talk about this graph. I still remember Dr. Majumder is the pioneer in that. I've seen him understanding the lactic and creating this lot of lactic tests right from many years before, when we are young. And I'm sure he got immense amount of data of all the swimmers. And I've told him once also, Dr. Sir, I love to get some of the information to get an understanding about Indian swimmers and how they perform. If I'm not wrong, I should tell you in this regard, Veer Dhaval Khare, it was in the National Camp 2005. I was also in that. Veer Dhaval Khare has given a lactate of 22 millimole. And at that time, he's the one who have actually said that he's going to be outstanding swimmer. Veer Dhaval Khare was nowhere at that time, right? And see where he was as one of the greatest sprint swimmer country I've ever produced. So this is very important to understand and derive conclusion about the swimmer, because no matter pushing a swimmer without understanding the direction of push, मैं आपको पुश कर रहा हूं मगर मैं जानता नहीं हूं कहां पे आपका गोल है, you are going to end up with luck. आपका luck अगर अच्छा होगा, you might reach the goal. आपका luck अगर खराब होगा, you may not reach the goal. So this is something you need to do. And 7 into 200 test is one of the most popular approach. And you can not only you need to use lactic testing material, you can also use the heart rate. Heart rate se bhi you can derive this graph. This graph 7 into 200. I'll be giving you a very simple brief. Again, the details you can see in Khelo India test. You start with a very low intensity 200, and then you increase the intensity of every 200, and at the end you go to maximum intensity. You take the lactic acid in between. Probably after the first 200, you take lactic acid once. Before you start the race, you take lactic acid once. Then the next 200, and then you take lactic acid in every 200, and you derive a graph. And this is called lactic acid graph. And why it is so important, I'll just come in by next slide. This is why it is so important. And this is the foundation of swimming, I would say. Untrained, I would rather say under-trained swimmer versus a well-trained swimmer. What happened? I have just discussed about the 4 training approach. What are the training approach I've discussed? I've discussed about aerobic capacity, anaerobic capacity, aerobic power, and anaerobic power. The picture 1 is the initial stage of a particular mid-distance swimmer. So assume that the personal best of that mid-distance swimmer, just give me a second, let me, sorry. Correct. So, I need to move the thing when I can't see the girl. So the swimmer pre-training performance is say 4 minute 22 second 0.5 in 400 meter freestyle. Now you have received that swimmer and you're the coach, and your job is to ensure that you get the peak performance of that swimmer. Remember, first thing, if you have a sports scientist, take the help. Coach and sports scientist, unless they amalgamate, you cannot derive the performance. I just recently went to Australia to the best, I would say one of the best swimming coach of Australia is Michael Ball, and I spent some time with him, and we see that every day, at least thrice a week, there is some sports scientist person who's also linked with swimming, is always there to support him and guide him. So, you know, these are the things we as a coach don't have any ego. You know, sports scientists are there to help us. You know, they are not going to take your job, because ultimately you will be getting the, charm of making a swimmer perform. The credit will go to the coach firstly, then to any other factors. So just be assured and engage a sports scientist if you can, if you have. Anyways, let's come to the topic. Suppose pre-training, a swimmer is clocking 4 minute 22.5 seconds. So the first thing what we generally do, we work on the aerobic capacity of a swimmer. As I said, long and slow swimming and a bit of variable speed. What happens to that? What happens to that is this. Suppose a swimmer is swimming at a certain speed initially. Suppose a swimmer is swimming at a certain speed initially. Say, you can see my mouse cursor. Say at 1.5 millimole, you will see the swimmer is holding 1.5 millimole lactate at a higher speed with the training of aerobic capacity. So that's going to shift the bottom of the curve down. And I think that works for all the sport. I'm sure Kullanda can tell me. I'm sure it helps in athletics also. The approach is similar in most of the sport, I believe. Then the next part is aerobic power. What happens to aerobic power? The bottom part, as I said, the CSS part. And what is CSS? CSS lies between 3 to 4 millimole. So that part, when you work on anaerobic part, that part shift to the right side. Now that's fantastic, because if it shifts to the right side, you're getting more speed without getting your body fatigued. The next part comes to anaerobic capacity. What's the fundamental of anaerobic capacity? Anaerobic capacity ensures that you manage to generate more lactate, or your production capacity of lactate goes high. And the last part is anaerobic power, which is more lactic tolerance. When you can produce more lactic acid, you're getting fatigue, but can you tolerate that fatigue? So anaerobic power are generally a component in tapper phase. Anaerobic capacity is very less important for swimmer, but you need to do that because in 1500 meter, in the last 100, you want to beat the person next to you. For that, you need to have the anaerobic capacity. I'll give you a classic example of Jan Thorpe versus Hicken. So what happens, both of them used to do together 1500 meter freestyle team, 1400 meter. But in the last 100, Jan Thorpe is to beat him by strong kicking. And strong kicking comes only when you have good amount of lactic production capacity at the end. So that is something we will discuss. Now, what happened once you do all this, so let's start again. Aerobic capacity, bad thing is when you are building aerobic capacity, your anaerobic capacity is going down. So that's the sad part. Then you comes to aerobic power. When you're building aerobic power, your anaerobic capacity and aerobic capacity goes down. There comes to anaerobic capacity. When you're building the anaerobic capacity, your aerobic capacity come down. So I always do aerobic and anaerobic capacity building together. As I said, anaerobic capacity is not that important for distance swimmer. So you don't need to do separate training for anaerobic capacity in your training program. I'll just show you at the end in the periodization model, but it has to be aerobic and anaerobic capacity together. And then, of course, regarding just before tap out or in competitive phase, you can hit a bit of anaerobic power, and here comes the performance. And the swimmer clocked 4 minutes 8 seconds. It happened actually. It happened to one of our swimmers. So I'm giving you the example of a live Indian swimmer. Training effect. One second. Okay, training effect. You're doing some training. You have done all this segment of practice. But whether the training is affecting the swimmer. For coaches, what is visible? We can see improved CSS. Improved CSS means swimmers not getting fatigued, but they are swimming at a higher intensity, or they are swimming at a better time without getting themselves into fatigue. You can see reduction of heart rate. So, reduction of resting heart rate. Reduced resting heart rate is, what is resting heart rate? Around 3 o'clock in the night, generally, this is what we do. Around 3 o'clock in the night, if you can get the heart rate of a swimmer, so you can ask the swimmer to wear those heart rate bands, or you can also ask some of the other swimmer to check their heart rate, or the coaches or the parents can do it. So you will see the heart rate is reducing. That means swimmer is getting more fit. Holding efficiency and higher intensity. If you can see a swimmer at a higher intensity is holding a good efficiency, that's a sign that the training effect is doing well. And of course, less fatigue. This is what visible to a coach. What would be visible to a sports scientist? Shift of lactic curve. Improve V4. What is V4? Velocity at lactate 4. What is velocity at lactate 4? When you are producing lactic acid of 4 millimole in your body, what kind of speed you have? This comes from the curve. You know, when you draw the curve and you go to 4 and get the intersection, you get that. It's more sports science thing. I think they can explain you better this. Better VO2 max. Now, VO2 max testing can be done vertically and also horizontally. I personally feel you should be doing more horizontal based. If you don't have a horizontal based platform to test your VO2 max, do rowing rather than running or walking. I think that kind of work more for swimmers. And of course, blood hemoglobin, and there are a lot of other blood samples which will indicate that whether a swimmer is getting positive training effect. Let us come to the real application. All right. Let us show you how we managed to make distance swimmer. I'm coming to Toloda's, Dr. Majumder's question, that how we managed to derive that. So we generally take tests. So because tests are very important guideline for coaches. I'm giving some practice, but whether the practice is helping the swimmer, I can only derive very easily from the test. So what we do for a mid-distance or distance swimmer, we do a test called T3000 or 3 kilometer non-stop swimming. As I said, it's also a Khelo India accredited test. During the rule is, you always swim double than your racing distance. So if you're planning to build a swimmer for 1500, you always swim double. So you swim 3 kilometers. Again, this is something. In the month of September, when he was not outstanding at that point in his 800 or 1500 or 400 freestyle, we have taken his timing. His total timing was 34:57.6. His pulse was 155. You may have lactic acid analyzer. You may not have lactic acid analyzer. Don't bother about it. Your pulse will give you an indication more. So lactic pre and post was about 1 and 3.8. So it is okay as long as it is within that range. We are very comfortable with that. So we derived his average timing per 100. We have asked that swimmer to go all out for 3 kilometers, and we have derived the average timing, which is 189.9 seconds. So what we do, and this is what you need to do. You need to see his 100-meter base timing. So his 100-meter base timing at that time was 54.6 seconds. And then you need to see what percentage of his average timing compared to his best 100-meter timing. This is for mid-distance and distance swimmer. This is very important approach. You know, if you do that, you can actually understand that whether the training effect is going right. And we have seen that it's 78.11. So what we derive from this? Remember this, when you're testing a swimmer, if this percentage of the 100 personal best and 300 average timing is within 75, I would say 75 to 6 to 82. these people are good mid-distance or distance swimmers. For mid-distance swimmers, anything under that is more sprint-based swimmer. So if your percent is under 75, you're more sprint-based swimmer. If it is under 17, you're a hardcore sprinter. 15 छोड़ के कुछ नहीं होगा रे बाबा. So it's like that. So what we did, we understand it's 78.11%. So our job is to ensure that the swimmer should go to 80% level, because for mid-distance swimmers, 76 to 80% is a very good steady rate, and that was what our target was. So we hit him with aerobic capacity. Now what happened? What is the outcome of aerobic capacity? We have taken the test in the month of November, and once we hit him with the aerobic capacity, we saw that his percentage went up to 80.89. So he built his aerobic capacity, right? The average time comes to 17.5. But this is not going to satisfy us, because this is not going to give me a bigger timing. So what we have to do next? Next, we have to push him more for power. So we are satisfied that we achieved our 80%. And as long I am not getting that timing, I wouldn't have gone to anaerobic power or aerobic power. I wouldn't have gone to aerobic power unless I'm satisfied with aerobic capacity. So I'm satisfied, okay, the swimmer got the right kind of aerobic capacity. So I'm going to hit him with aerobic power and a bit of anaerobic power along with. What happens? The output is his speed becomes better. And he's talking 16.6. Even if you look at it, his lactic post is slightly down, and that's fantastic. All right. So by that time, since we hit him with anaerobic power a bit, what is the output when we hit a swimmer with anaerobic power? His sprint capacity goes better. So if you look at him, his 100 timing is 53.5. So when I compare this timing, the latest 100-meter timing with his average pace, it's about 80%, which is similar to what happened when his 100 base timing was 54.6. So though he got a better average, but when I compare with that anaerobic capacity support, anaerobic power support, we have justified. Now, after this February, we are ready for taper. We are ready for competition phase. Now, what is competition phase? We have to hit him with a bit of anaerobic power and taper. Now, the bad effect is, as I said, when you are hitting a swimmer with anaerobic power, your aerobic capacity, your aerobic power will go down slightly. And that's what happened. So when we have taken the test in the month of March, before he went for his competition, international competition in Thailand, in the month of April 4th, I think April 4th, he has clocked the B-cut timing in 800 freestyle. And he's the first one to break the B-cut timing of Olympic 800 freestyle. So his average speed was slightly higher. And I'm quite happy with that. Because as I said, when you're working on the taper, your average speed for distance is going to go slightly higher, because your aerobic capacity is going to go down a bit when you're working on your taper part, when you're working on an anaerobic part. So this is the way, with very simple test of just seeing 3 kilometers swimming and taking the timing, you can derive a swimmer, and you can see whether the segment of training what we have discussed so far is actually happening. Because the segment of training is very easy to say, but coach need to improvise how to use that in water. If I tell my swimmer, Kushagra, aaj humko aerobic capacity karna hai, he won't understand anything out of it. Kushagra, you have to swim at this pace, he will understand that. So this is something as a coach, I think we need to remember. Now, what are the areas, how we can derive this critical velocity as we discuss, or critical swimming speed as we discuss? I'll show you a very simple way of understanding a swimmer. If you take these two ratios, the personal best of 100 meter and personal best of 50 meter, ये दोनों का personal best लीजिए, divide कीजिए. If the ratio is coming to 2.37 and plus minus indication is there, that swimmer is going to be more sprint based swimmer. So, remember that. That's the kind of event you expect him to do. Because as I said, you can push a swimmer, but before you push, you need to understand which way you are pushing. I'm pushing the swimmer and I'm pushing in the wrong way. All our hard work, both swimmers, ours, and the parents, will be drained inside the water. When you're talking about 100, this ratio is slightly less. You can also do this 100 testing by taking the PB of 200 and 100. For 200, This is the ratio. You can see the ratio. You can take a picture. You can take a screenshot of this. This will help you. This will guide you for future. So for 400, we generally take 400 versus 200. We don't use that. We use a different platform of calculating the timing. But this can be a very simplified platform which all the coaches can do, and all the coaches can use it for their swimmer. Because you all know their best timings. You just need to get the ratio. Now, once you get the ratio, you understand what kind of swimmer they are. Now, if you feel that they are mid-distance or distance-based swimmer, here is the link: www.swimsmooth.com/improve/ whatever it is. You can take a picture of this, screenshot of this, and let me go to that link. Kolanda, is it coming to your screen? Or Dr. Majumder, is it coming to your screen?
It's fine. It's
oh,
fine. It's
okay,
coming.
right. So this is CSS training, right? Just go to the end part. आप देखिएगा, different coaches have different pool length. You might have a 25-meter pool, 50-meter pool. So as you might put 50 meters, you put the timing. Say, let me put Shivangi Sharma's timing. So it's 4 minutes, 30 seconds for pond freestyle, and say 2 minutes, 7 seconds for 200 freestyle. Now, once I put the data, I just put calculation, and I get my CSS space. Now, those who have Tempo Trainer, or those who are asking swimmers to buy Tempo Trainer, the Tempo Trainer Pro setting is also given, so that might help you for Tempo Trainer purpose. But in a very simplified form, with a single click, you can understand the CSS space or maximum lactic test, steady rate, all these things you can understand with a single click from this website. I think this will be a good guideline for you. Let's come back to the slide. Okay, I'm nearly at the end of my talk about approach for distance swimmers, and I'll just touch a bit of periodization. We have discussed a detail about periodization in the seminar for Sports Authority of India and Swimming Federation of India before, so I'm not going to touch a lot on that. I'm just going to touch the approach. So the approach is generally, this is my approach again, it varies. When you're making periodization, it varies swimmers to swimmer, your facility to facility, and your need to need. When we talk about seasonal plan or macro cycle, generally Indian coaches use 3 or 2 seasonal plan. So let us think about a year where we use 3 macro cycle. So in that case, you'll be having a macro cycle of 18 weeks, then probably 16 weeks and 17 weeks, something like that. So I've drawn a macro cycle of 18 weeks. And in that, your capacity phase should be 1 to 9, first 9 weeks, which also includes the initial stage of recovery practice. And then you go for power, 10 to 15th week. Then 2-week tapper if you want. Again, tapper depends on swimmers. Distance swimmer should not be doing more than 2 weeks. A young distance swimmer should be doing only 1 week or maybe 3-4 days tapper. Tapper for young swimmer or under pivotal swimmer doesn't help you, seriously, right? So don't just drop the volume so much that they lose all their aerobic capacity. That is something you need to be very careful. So this is, when we talk about intensity, as you can see in the red line, it is more intensity. As you can see, from capacity to power, the intensity is going high. The red line is going up. And suddenly from tapper onward, there's a slash in intensity. So not only slash in volume, there's also slash in intensity. The volume and intensity roughly is shown. Now let me show you as a coach how you're going to draw. Look at this. Look at this chart. It will help you to understand how I'm supposed to draw my long-term plan. I think I need to. Right. Okay. What is this? What is GP? Look at this chart, right? So date is basically week. So don't, I think I've mistyped that date. It's supposed to be week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 to week 18. So it's an 18-week periodization or seasonal plan or macro cycle. GP is your general preparation. Your general preparation 1 is preparatory. General preparation 2. SP is specific preparation. SP1, SP2. RP is your race preparation, and then you have your competition. Say on 18th week you have competition, so you should always start from reverse. So when we know that okay, within 18 week I have my competition, so you keep 2-week taper. First you put the competition, you start from the column low 18, and then you go upward, and that's the way you're supposed to do it, and that's the way the periodization is supposed to be chalked out. There are a few pointers which I like to do. The volume and everything you can see. The pointer one, when you start a swimmer's practice, like after lockdown, post lockdown, you have to start very slowly. So don't try to push speed with them. So in preparatory phase, it's just going to be aerobic development and aerobic overload. Aerobic development and aerobic overload is basically part of your energy system 1 or EN1. So both aerobic development, which is long and glide swimming, and overload, this is part of your EN1. So make sure you do that. So if you look at first 2 weeks, we are not doing 10 sessions. We generally do 10 sessions for our swimmers. Again, it varies from coach to coach, facility to facility, meet to meet. So it's on you. I'm giving a guideline what I believe and I do generally with my swimmers. So we start with a very low volume, 20 to 25 kilometers, 8 sessions initially, and then we jump to 30 to 35 kilometer because even the number of sessions is going high, 9. And we, again, 6 aerobic development, 2 aerobic overload, and 1 anaerobic threshold. That kind of practice we're going to do. After that, our general preparation 2, once the swimmer is comfortable, we are starting with aerobic capacity development. If you look at the volume is steadily going up in the aerobic capacity stage. And that's pretty good. We get the max volume of 50 to 60 kilometer per week. Again, depending on your need, you can modify the volume. I've just given a rough sketch of volume. For mid-distance swimmer, the volume needs to be less. For distance swimmer, the volume needs to be higher. What kind of practice we need to do in aerobic capacity? As I said before, that we have to do aerobic capacity practice. In aerobic capacity practice, if you have 10 sessions, 4 sessions will have priority towards aerobic development, which is very easy, comfortable swimming, kicking, pulling, and all. 3 set is going to be aerobic cruise practice or aerobic overload practice. 1 set should be anaerobic threshold set. One of the classic anaerobic threshold set I feel you should be doing is 15 into 100 or 20 into 100 at CSS speed. Now you have derived how to achieve CSS speed. So once you know your CSS speed, you tell a swimmer to do 30 or 20 into 100 at CSS speed. You know what kind of heart rate you're supposed to hold because I've shown that in my previous slide. And give them a rest between 20 seconds if you're doing 100, 10 to 20 seconds. If you're doing more than 100, you can also go to a rest interval of 30 seconds. So restart timing should be based on that. If a swimmer is swimming at an average pace of 110, then you should give them start at 1 minute 30 seconds or something like that. And then there's 1 VO2 max or lactic production and removal set. Lactic production and removal set is something like that. You do some high speed practice, say you do 4 into 50 at 200 pace, where you're going to create some lactic acid in your body. Then you do 3 into 100 or 6 into 100 at a steady pace, at CS pace, and see whether the swimmer is managing to hold the CS pace. What CS pace does, CS pace means you're balancing your production and your removal. So after you produce the lactic acid with 4 into 50, and then you do a set where the intensity is high, but should not be so high that you get fatigue. So it will help you to build more buffering capacity. Now, building the buffering capacity is also a support system from nutritionists. So nutritionists and sports scientists will also give you a guideline how to build buffering capacity through proper diet plan. Let's talk about aerobic and anaerobic capacity. As I said, for distance swimmer, don't just do anaerobic capacity straight. It's not going to help you. Because anaerobic capacity doesn't play a great role for distance or mid-distance swimmer, but it is important. Aerobic and anaerobic capacity, always merge them. As you can see, we are again increasing the volume, and at the end of specific preparation 1 block, the volume is about 60 to 65 kilometers, which is our peak volume for the whole season. You know, that week we are going to do peak volume. What are the general components, or what are the general training you need to do in SP1? 3 aerobic development, 2 aerobic overload, fine. Then 1 anaerobic threshold or 2 anaerobic threshold, I'm sorry. So you 2 anaerobic threshold, 2 VO2 max, or you can do 1 VO2 max, 1 LPR. You can do that. And here, 1 lactic production. Do not do lactic tolerance. Your lactic tolerance go to your anaerobic power zone. So 1 lactic production set. Sorry, only 1 lactic production set. So this is what you need to do in aerobic, anaerobic, and anaerobic capacity. Then you're coming to aerobic power, the most important thing for swimmer. And you need to see that, be very careful. There's a very thin line between a swimmer getting the fatigue and not getting the fatigue. So you need to be taking the RP that at this stage, and you need to ensure that they should be having good nutrition, that the glycogen level doesn't go exhausted, right? And also remember, when we're doing anaerobic power, you cannot repeat VO2 max set step by step. A VO2 max set has to be repeated only after 36 hours gap. And otherwise, if you repeat that, the swimmer may die, they may end up with fatigue. So be very careful. In this phase, aerobic power, we do 3 aerobic development, 1 aerobic overload, 2 anaerobic threshold, 3 VO2 max and LPR, probably 2 VO2 max and 1 LPR you can do, or vice versa. And again, only lactic production, not tolerance. After that, we are ready for rest. Now, once we're ready, we start with aerobic capacity and anaerobic power. We start with aerobic development here. Aerobic development needs to be a little more because your body needs more rest. So 4 sessions of that in the first week, then 1 session of aerobic overload, 2 sessions of anaerobic threshold, 1 session of VO2 max, and 2 sessions where 1 is going to be lactic production and 1 is going to be lactic tolerance. Lactic tolerance is basically a anaerobic power set. I'll give you an example of anaerobic power and anaerobic capacity set. If I'm asking a swimmer to do 8 into 100 at 2 minute 30 second restart, or maybe a 3 minute restart, we are working on their anaerobic capacity. But if I ask a swimmer to do only 4 into 100 with 10 minute rest, first 2 with dive, and next 2 with push, where second 50 need to be maximum in the last 2, we're actually working on their anaerobic power. So anaerobic capacity and anaerobic power. So these are the 2 kind of set that might help you a bit. Anyway, let us go to the, and as you can see, the volume is coming down because in this kind of set, it's very taxing. Higher volume and also higher intensity may, drain that swimmer's ability, and they may end up to a fatigue zone. That's something we have to be very, very, very careful. 10 session is compulsory. Then the next set is march, and this is the individualized. This to select as a coach. Taper and marging. Marging is basically from developing all the 4 factors, how you are combining all the 4 factors and putting it inside your training in a week. This is something you need to plan. You need to march for your swimmers. Then taper, the same thing, very individualistic, and then you end up with competition. So with that all, I think I'm done with my talk. So this is basically the overall idea about distance and mid-distance swimmers. Sorry, I've taken a lot of time, but we can cut short the other part, which is Q&A. I'm ready for question or anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Partha. It's wonderful listening to you, and I will request the participants or the viewers, if they have any question, can they raise the question, please?
So one question has come. I'd like to request one of our faculty member, Mr. Subroto Doctor, to carry on the questionnaire session and also control the remaining session, please.
Good afternoon, all of you. May I request today's speaker, Sri Partha, to answer the questions which has been pop up in the chat box. The questions are like this. What is the normal athlete lactic acid level and how often should we check the level? This was the question put by Avantika Vanda Ray.
Okay, now what should be the actual, I think I have discussed this enough. In every phase of training, on every energy system of training, you have different level of lactic acid. So there's no hard and fast rule that you have to have a fixed lactic acid. But if you are training distance-based swimmer, they don't get a very high peak lactic acid level. Let me pass this question to Dr. Majumdar. Dr. Majumdar, you have taken this lactic test for swimmers for several years of Indian swimmers. As per you, what is the average peak lactic you get for distance-based swimmers?
Possibly it would be around, maximum is around 12 to 14 for the distance swimmer, and for sprint swimmer 50, 100, it may go up to 14 to 16 millimole per liter, not exceeding that. If he is exceeding that, then possibly it is not good, because higher the lactate always is not good, because higher lactate causes the acidosis, which leads to the poor recovery.
Thank you, sir. The next question put by Deepa Yadav. She's asking, how can we know that 1C should be lactate production or lactate tolerance?
Okay, as I said, I've given you two examples, right? When you're talking about lactic tolerance, you're supposed to give a lot of recovery and a lot of rest to swimmers, right? And make sure they are well relaxed, all right? And then you hit them. You can give them a lot of rest. 10-minute rest, 10-minute active rest is something what you need to give. So as a coach, unless you have that lactic kit, it's not easy for you to judge that, but you can see the swimmer and ensure that for lactic tolerance set, you're giving enough rest to swimmers, very long rest, but for lactic production set, you're giving controlled rest. That means they're producing some lactic acid and that is still in their body. And again, you're hitting them, they're producing the lactic acid, it's still in their body. But for lactic tolerance set, you can give sufficient time so that, they get the recovery.
That's good. Thank you, Sri Partha Pratim Majumder. I think there is no other question left in this chat box. So let me, whether Sri Sanjeev Chakraborty is there? Sri Sanjeev Chakraborty, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Sri Sanjeev Chakraborty, now I request you to international swimmer to say your views about this particular session.
I must say, one of the outstanding sprinter we have ever seen, Sanjeev. We have very high regards to you.
Yeah, thank you, Partha. Yeah, really, you have developed lots in coaching, and I heard about from Bula that you are one of the best coach in India now. Because I know your when you are in the railway.
I must tell everyone, I've been recruited by Sanjeev Chakraborty in railways. He's the founder who brought me in competitive swimming and get my bread and butter from swimming.
Yeah, no, he was a very good backstroker also, Partha. Now really you are a very good coach. Now I heard listen from you more than 1 hour. It's a very good for our swimming arena. It's our swimming India. It's very good, and that you said really it is very nice for us now, who are the coaching in India now, because in our 80 decades we have not got this type of class or anything, and because now the swimmers have to be the methodically swimming. They know, they learn about the swimming, that what they are doing, and the coaches are also they're telling to about that VO2 max and what you told that capacity of power, biomechanics, physiology, psychology. This really is needs for our swimmers, and I thanks lots for the SAI also, because they are doing it. I have two views, means which I have done in my life. I lost the bronze medal in 1982 Asian Games. That I was telling, because Partha has said this, the lactic is really, it was that time we don't know that what about that, but after that I learned when I was doing coaching in Kolaghat also. But one thing, see, 4 by 200 meter freestyle relay, where we did all the below 2 minutes by Khajan Singh, myself, and Sitaram Sau and Ranojoy Punja. They are the 4 we had. and we swam. We are the Khajan Singh was the first man, swam 200 meters. Then Sitaram Sahu, third one myself, and last one is the Ranojoy Punja. When Ranojoy Punja jumped into the water, we were means ahead in the third place. In Indonesian was in the fourth place, and we are in the third place. Whole gallery was shouting that we are getting the bronze medal, and really we are in very much thrilled that time that we are getting the medals after 1951. But suddenly after the 100 meters, Ranojoy Punja was slowly going down. Means she couldn't swim. I can't understand what happened, because 175 meters he was more than 10 meters ahead in the Indonesian swimmer. But when he has touched, he couldn't swim. That's the main thing. He couldn't swim. That was my in the eyes. I'm watching this. That how he has dropped that. Now the Partha was telling, no, this is the lactic. It was, I think, he was fully lactic acid. He was in the body, and that's how he lost. Means we are dropped into the water, that bronze medal. Only touch. It is a really astonishing that we are lost the bronze medal for India for our swimming arena. And one thing again I am telling that about that Partha was giving coaching also. And 1984 in Olympics, where the Rajiv Gandhi that time was the prime minister, and he was boycotted the Olympics. But same thing, and the Moscow, the swimming team and the cycling team and some teams have gone for the Paralympics. The level of Olympics they did in Moscow. And you know that swimming arena, that Vladimir Salnikov was the fastest 1500 meters freestyler who has swam that time the below 14 minutes. He was the world record holder and Olympic champion also, Vladimir Salnikov. I very much close to him on that last 5 days. And he took me in his coach. And I told that you are watching the Indian swimmers. What about your views in our swimming? Oh, he said that you don't know, the Indian swimmers don't know how to catch the water. It is the main imperfection is that you have to catch the water, then pull and then push. This is the main thing in our swimming that Partha was telling about this whole more than 1 hour. That's our coaches. I am also requesting our Indian coaches also that first you have to learn to our swimmers that how to catch the water, how to pull and how to push. This is the main thing in our swimming. And then that what he has told is really now effective in our swimming arena. Thank you, Partha. We are
thank you, Sujit. It's a privilege seeing you after so long.
We are listening also. It's really good. We are enlightening also that very much. And what I will say, you are doing it, and I hope that the 6 swimmers, I think, our Indian swimmers are going to be in the Olympics. I hope it is, Partha.
No, we are still not sure because swimmers are working hard. The federation will take the decision.
In the paper, I have seen that approaching to.
There are 6 swimmers who got B qualifying timing. Yeah,
B
Dubai.
Qualifying. They want to swim and they practice also in Dubai. It is not bad. I think if we can do more than 3 or 4 persons in Olympics, we will be proud of our Indian swimming team.
For sure.
Really good, Partha. Thank you, Kolanda.
Thank you, Sri
Thank you.
Sanjeev Chakravarti, international swimmer, for your
I was in national 7 times. I was the fastest swimmer in our country.
And luckily, I've seen you swimming a bit also, Sanjeev. Relay practice also, I've seen you a bit.
Amazing. Really. It is memorable also. Partha, he was a backstroker. He is really good.
I'm talking about your swimming. Your swimming was great.
No, Partha, that time was my repeating that what you are telling, the frequency of our hand. That time not so fast. Sebastian Javier, his hand was so frequency fast. But myself and Khajan Singh, not that type of fast. But we had a hard pull. That hard pull we had. And that's for, in 1982, I swam 54.42 seconds. And then came 7th in our Indian swimming in 100 meters freestyle after Sachin Nag, 54.42 seconds. And in our 50 meters freestyle, that time I swam 24.24. So now we are increasing, and your guidance in our coaching, I think it is very nice. In our Indian swimming also very nice. It is going on. Thank you, Partha. Thank you, Kolanda.
Question नहीं आ रहा है ना? There's the question. Okay, before we give up the end of the session, I request Dr. Pralay Majumder, HTP High Performance Director, New Delhi, to sum up the sessions with his views on this particular occasion. Dr. Pralay Majumder.
I think the objective of the session is basically for the maximum benefit for the coaches. And I think most of the viewers will do agree that the session was quite fruitful. It is not only limited to swimming, but in a larger extent, it is the grammar of endurance training rather, because all the sports require, particularly for the endurance sports, require to build up the aerobic phase, require to build up the anaerobic phase, require to build up the, the coaches need to work on a mixed zone that is aerobic anaerobic. So what Parth has indicated that initially he started from different zone training. He talked about the biomechanics, he talked about the mental toughness slightly. There was no time. And he has totally, I personally, Parth, I learned from your thing. I of course, I know a little bit science, but I don't know swimming much, because this clinic is basically, we have designed for to learn for the scientists, not for the coaches, to be very honest, because we require to have our main sports background much more clear, so that whatever interpretation in future we will give, it would be meaningful in terms of our interpretation. Because sometimes if you know your area, but if you cannot link up with your particular sports and the periodization in particular, because if I will give you an examples, because the average lactate in the base preparation for any of the workout and the average lactate of your in your pre-competition and competition, it differ, because during even the taper off time also the lactate goes low. Even the base preparation, if you're aerobic, if you are having the session for your aerobic, then the lactate is relatively high. When you are shifting from the pre-competition zone, then your lactate, because you have the aerobic base, and what you have indicated, for once you are going for the anaerobic phase, when you wanted to develop the anaerobic phase, your aerobic foundation bound to go down. That's also a good takeaway for the coach, because where the dominance of energy system is on the aerobic base, so the coaches should have built up the aerobic base in such a way that if it comes down, it should not come so much down, so it can impede his further performance. So that's one of the thing you have indicated, and I think it is wonderful session, because we have a limited time. We are over time now. So
I like to thank sports. Sorry, just to jump in.
Yeah. Please
I like to thank Sports Authority of India, Dr. Majumder, Dr. Kollan, for creating this wonderful initiative, and thank you so much for this. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Parth. Thank you. It's indeed a pleasure, and I think all of us, it's an attempt, and all of us will work in the same direction to build that thing, whatever we are aiming at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pralay Majumder, High Performance Director, New Delhi, is also looking after the development of performance for the Eastern region. I like to thank today's speaker, Sri Partha Pratim Majumder, Head Coach, SAI, Glenmark National Center for Excellence. It's a wonderful presentation from your part. You have described about how to build up the endurance program for your swimmers. It's an examples for all the discipline also, that how the performance can be enhanced and the endurance can be enhanced through this type of training. It's a beautiful, even I come from football discipline, I have also enjoyed that particular session. Thank you, Sri Partha Majumder. I like to thank Mrs. Bula Choudhury, Padmashri and Arjuna Awardee for her valuable lecture during the start of this particular session. It was a wonderful things that she has explained, the things, how she felt during the competitions. Next, I like to thank Sanjeev Choudhury, international swimmer, who has given his valuable tips during this particular session. I like to thank Dr. Kalyan Choudhury, in charge academics, to take so much pain and to make this program towards beneficial for the swimmers. I like to thank all the participants who were present during this particular webinar and particularly these particular sessions. I like to thank everybody who has contributed for this program for the progress. At the last, I request all of you to join us for the next session, which will be on Monday, on 10th of this particular month. And the topic will be on systematic adaptations due to endurance training, which will be explained by Dr. Snehanshu Adhikari, JSO, Exercise Physiology, Sai, NSCC, Kolkata. Once again, I like to thank on and everybody. Thank you. Yeah, it's okay.